so much for joining us here on our very first podcast episode at Family First Firm. We're so excited to be bringing this information to you, and it's information every family can use because we're all getting older all the time. So my name's Karla Ray. I'm a business development manager here at Family First Firm, and I'm joined by the CEO and visionary behind the firm, Geoff Hoatson. Before we get into the topic today of how to pay for long-term care, which is such an important one, just talk to me about how we got here. Where did the idea for Family First Firm even come from?
Yeah, that's going to take the whole podcast. It started really when I recognized the needs for my own family. Growing up, my grandparents went through just a whole host of different challenges. My dad's side, his mother was involved in a car accident later in life and ended up with a lawsuit from that. Her husband ended up with early onset Alzheimer's. Most of my memories of him are in a nursing home where he lived for the better part of 20 years. Those two things, created some real significant financial hardship for them. On my mom's side, both of her parents ended up with dementia later in life, getting taken advantage of by their neighbors who came over asking for money for groceries day after day after day. They'd write them checks, $200, $300, $400 each day. Finally, my mom figured out thousands of dollars were going to these people. Wow. And they moved them to a facility. I've kind of lived the challenges that a lot of our clients face. And so that was really the motivation for creating a firm designed to help people protect, their families and protect seniors.
And what sets Family First Firm apart? Because there are a lot of lawyers in Florida, but this is really unique in the way that we approach our clients.
Yeah. So, the things that I think are very unique, obviously just being an elder law firm in general. There's not a lot of people who practice in this area. I jokingly say that it is one of the few underserved areas of the law because there's lawyers everywhere. Mm-hmm. And, but despite, divorce lawyers or criminal law or personal injury, as you see everywhere, there's not a lot of people doing this and really focusing on helping seniors. So that's one thing that already kind of starts to set us apart. But the really thing within that niche, I guess, that makes us pretty unique is the approach that we take to being a very, I'll say, results-oriented law firm, in the sense that we just include a lot of stuff that other lawyers charge for, because I have the approach to it that nobody has ever come to us caring about how long it takes or the steps that we have to go through in order to get them the results. They want the end result, right? Like when you go to McDonald's, you're generally not worried about how long they're leaving the burger on the fry top or whatever before they flip it. You just, ultimately want your burger. And so that's kind of the approach that we have. And because of that, we've been able to build this beyond kind of the small little mom and pop shop that most elder law attorneys are. And we've been able to build kind of like a larger organization which really allows us to have more impact in the amount of clients that we're able to help.
And a lot of clients coming through these doors every single day.
Yeah.
So when I joined the firm, I'll admit that I knew very little about what it meant to pay for long-term care as someone is aging. There are a lot of layers to this. So from the 50,000 foot view, what do people need to think about as they're getting older or as their parents are getting older in terms of how much they should expect to pay for long-term care?
Sure. And before I jump into that, I just want to talk about two key things that people just don't understand about this area in general. The first is that they assume that Medicare pays for their long-term care. Oh, when I get old, Medicare is going to pay for it. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. The only thing that Medicare pays for that's even kind of related is rehabilitation. So if you have a medical event, you end up in a hospital for 3 overnights, being admitted for 3 overnights consecutively, and are discharged out to a nursing facility. Sometimes people think of nursing homes, the rehab centers, that Medicare will pay for the first 20 days of rehab. And then there's a copay from day 21 up to 100. You're not guaranteed 100 days either. They pay for rehab as long as you're improving. Once you are no longer improving, then Medicare does cut off. That's just important because people assume Medicare is going to pay for this, and it does not. The second thing that people assume is that, it's probably not going to happen to me. And that's the kind of challenging thing, because I think the last statistics that I've seen say 71% of people who hit the age of 65 years old are going to use long-term care. So, that's almost 3 out of 4 people. If you're lucky enough to get to age 65 years old, go retire and all that, there is basically almost 75% chance that you're going to need this. Wow. So, it is, like you said, something that everyone needs to be thinking about. As far as the cost, heaven knows. Okay. I mean, I can tell you that 20 years ago, so in 2000, the average cost of a nursing home for a year in America was about $46,000 a year, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not insignificant. In 2020, and that's before we've seen all this extra inflation, but in 2020, it was $109,000. So an over 100% increase in about a 20-year period. Since then, we're seeing that go up substantially more. And here in Florida, those are even higher than the averages. I mean, it's not uncommon to see anywhere from 130 to up to $180,000 a year for nursing home care here in Florida.
Is the major jump that we have seen from the year 2000 to the year 2020 because people are living longer and the cost of care has increased? Do we have any idea of why it's so much?
That's a great question. I don't think it's directly related to that because we've seen the same thing with healthcare expenses across the board. So it isn't just long-term care. The daily hospital rate in 2000 was $451 a day or something like that, right around there. In 2020, it was over 2,000, like 2,200 and something. I mean, everything has just gotten astronomically more expensive. I mean, even, you look at real estate and things like that, everything has just gotten a lot more expensive over the years. But healthcare has definitely been one of the industries hit the hardest by that. So
when people are seeking out a firm, a lot of times they want to know, do I even qualify for some of these programs that will help pay for long-term care? So talk about the way that long-term care is funded through these sources.
Yeah. So there's a few different options available to people when they're looking for long-term care. If you're doing the pre-planning side of things, you have asset protection tools, one of the things that makes us unique is I'm also a licensed financial advisor and insurance agent, and we offer long-term care products. So there are, as examples, there are annuities that you can use where you put some money in and then they give you a multiplier. Just to make numbers easy, you put $100,000 in, and if you need long-term care, they give you $250,000. And if you never use the long-term care, they give you the money back plus a small amount of interest, like your kids. So there's kind of like a not risk of like use it or lose it sort of thing, like you might have with, say, car insurance. That's a great pre-planning tool. But truly, I think what you're referencing is when people don't pre-plan, because let's just face it, as humans, we're good at a lot of stuff and we're generally great at dealing with crises, but we tend to be very poor at planning for things that are way down the line. And so as a result, the majority of our clients come to us because they haven't planned. There are programs available, government funded programs, things like veterans benefits, Medicaid, that will pay or contribute to long-term care expenses. And generally people come in saying, geez, I don't qualify for this. And truly, that's why we're here, because there are legal ways. And I want to emphasize that because sometimes people say, hey, is this legal? Can I,
Right.
Am I going to jail? No. Florida is one of the best states in the union to need Medicaid. And so we have a lot of ways to protect what you have and still get you Medicaid to pay for the care. Sometimes people feel a little weird about that. They say, Medicaid's for poor people and I'm not poor. And, why should I, be able to get this? And I always remind them, I'm sure you're taking your Social Security. You don't have any issues with that. You're taking your Medicare. You don't have any issues with that. And generally people say, well, yeah, because I paid into it. And I would say, well, yeah, you paid into Medicaid too. Your taxes go to Medicaid as well. And this is, probably the only chance you'll ever have to recoup some of that investment that you paid into that Medicaid program, just like you did with Medicare or Social Security.
Why is Florida so unique in this? Because it is one of only a few states that allows this sort of strategic asset protection to qualify.
Yeah. So every state has strategies. Most of them are just very bad. So Florida has more strategies to help get seniors eligible for Medicaid and protect their assets than any other state. The only state that I could really think of where it's maybe better isn't even a Medicaid state. It's California. They have their own version they call Medi-Cal because they can't be normal in anything apparently.
Shade to our
right? Yeah, no. But I mean, everyone out there probably also knows that too.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different kind of a whole different mindset out there. But ultimately, they just kind of give it to everybody. So it's very unique, and obviously that's California, and they do things a lot different than everybody else. But here in Florida, we have. The bottom line is we have a very aged population, and we have created our laws in a way that's designed to protect them and help them instead of forcing people to just go broke in nursing homes. We've given a way to still protect some of their family legacy and still get the care that they need.
Okay. So how does it work? Because I think when people hear asset protection, they think, okay, that means that I no longer have access to any of my money that I've worked for. And people have an aversion to that. So how does it work?
That's a great question. So when we are doing, I'll call it asset restructuring, because it's more than asset protection, really. We're working within two different sort of frameworks. We are taking assets which are countable. So the background here is that Florida says you can't have more than $2,000 of countable assets, and you can't have given away assets within 5 years of applying for Medicaid. That's really the background to all of the sort of work that we do. Those numbers, that $2,000 or $3,000 of countable assets, means that necessarily there are assets which are not countable. So our strategies fall into one of two buckets. We're either taking countable assets and making them non-countable. And so the person who's getting Medicaid can still keep that and have access and have that available, but it's just not countable. Or we're taking assets that are countable and moving them out of that person's name in a Medicaid-friendly way. There are ways to do that. It is not gifting. But there are things that Medicaid allows you to do that don't violate that 5-year look back period for transferring assets. So that's kind of like a big picture. Within those two buckets, there's a whole bunch of strategies each way.
And this is a huge benefit to the person who is seeking out the Medicaid benefit, because the cost of a nursing home in Florida, anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a month. I don't know who could pay for that out of pocket long term. Medicaid pays 100% of the balance minus their income.
Correct. Yeah. So they pay their income. Medicaid pays everything else. That's in a nursing facility. In an assisted living, it's kind of flipped, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I have theories about why it exists that way. It might be for another podcast. Ultimately, though, so a nursing home could be, $12,000, $13,000 a month, whatnot, and you may have $2,000 a month of Social Security and pension. Medicaid says you have to pay that minus the $160. They call it a personal needs allowance, very generous.
Yeah, $160. Don't spend it all in one place. Can't leave my house for less than $100 right now.
Yeah. Ultimately, though, they say, hey, if we're covering all of your medication, your board, your food, everything else, we'll help you, but you got to do your part. Mm-hmm. And your part looks like your income. So in that case, 100, let me see, it'd be $1,840, $1,840 is going to the facility. You keep 160. Medicaid pays everything else. So there's never an out of pocket, which is very nice, because then that means assets that we're able to protect or restructure can be used to supplement what Medicaid is paying for. A very common example is in a nursing facility, you may have someone in a semi-private room. That's a room with a sheet down the middle and someone on the other side. A lot of people would like to have a private room, but it costs more. Well, if you're going to pay for a private room individually, you may be paying $15,000 a month. But if you give Medicaid to pick up the lion's share of that and then say, okay, I want to pay the difference, well, it might only be $500 or $1,000 a month. And if you have that extra money, paying that small amount to have the private room compared to that semi-private can be a major change in the quality of life that resident is receiving. Absolutely. Or experiencing.
You mentioned a little bit the assisted living side of things. So for people who don't know the difference between a skilled nursing facility and assisted living, these are tiered levels of long-term care and a style of living. In assisted living, you're much more independent. Medicaid's not picking up as much because there's not as much to pay for, correct?
True, not as much to pay for, and just I think Medicaid views it more as a choice, assisted living, where nobody goes to nursing facilities for fun. Right, assisted living, they have movie theater rooms. Mm-hmm. And they take you on like what do they call them, like field trips to like wineries and breweries and stuff like this, and it's fun.
You think of it as a more active lifestyle. Yeah.
Oftentimes they have like pools and they're very beautiful and they're nice. The skilled setting is kind of a step down from a hospital. It feels more clinical, and so it is, because it's more of a, you go there because you have to. Medicaid says, okay, well, we're going to make sure that this is something that works for you. In the assisted living setting, they may say, okay, we're going to pay a total of $1,700 towards this place, and you got to figure out the rest. And if you can't figure out the rest, well, this isn't a place that you're able to stay. So it is a little different, and it does seem kind of odd, because in the assisted living, they're actually paying less than a skilled setting where they're paying substantially more. But again, this is just, the government at work, and this is how they've made the rules.
Right. Do we see more people moving to Florida because of these rules? Meaning, we know that we're a big retirement state already. Could this be part of the reason that people know that they can qualify for these long-term care coverages?
That's a great question. And I want to say no, it's just the weather. Uh, but, I think
Palm trees.
that's it. Palm trees and never having to shovel snow again.
Well, unless you live in
Unless,
the panhandle. It's like a once 40-year thing.
yeah, absolutely. But outside of that, yeah, no, I think the bottom line is I think there's just not enough information about this. And that's, I think, the purpose of what we're doing is try to really raise the education and awareness that, hey, this stuff exists. So, oftentimes we will be talking with people. They're saying, oh, my mom's in Iowa or Indiana or New Jersey or wherever. And, I'm trying to decide whether to keep her there or bring her here. Can you talk to me about the differences? When we talk through the differences, they're normally thinking, okay, yeah, it makes sense to come to Florida. Like there's tends to be better care options because there's more need for it. So, just like anything else, the more demand there is, the more supply there's going to be, and there's going to be competition. You'll probably see, better care. And then, the other piece of it is there's just a lot more ways to protect what they have and still get them the care that they need.
Absolutely. At the beginning of the conversation, you talked a little bit about the planning on the front end. So a lot of what we deal with are people coming to us saying, hey, my mom had a bad fall. We need to get her into skilled nursing within the next few weeks. If someone is in their, 60s, feeling good and wanting to plan for the future, you suggest those annuities, any other products that people can be looking into or estate planning that they can do to help them?
Sure. So, what I normally recommend is a kind of like a combination of strategies. There's, definitely the annuities. There are whole life policies, life insurance that have long-term care riders associated with them. So basically what that means is, let's say you have this life insurance policy and it has I'm going to use easy numbers. Just I went to law school, not math school. So I always like to give that disclaimers. That's why I use round numbers. But you have $1 million death benefit on a life insurance policy. And it also says, though, hey, if you end up needing long-term care before you pass away, you can accelerate say 25% of that $1 million. So now there's $250,000 you can use for long-term care during your life. Now, when you pass away, of course, there's only going to be 750,000 that would go to your children or family or whoever, but at least some of that is paid for.
Mm-hmm.
You have access to some of those funds while you're alive. The other option, the one that you alluded to with the estate planning, and is really cool, is our Family Fortress Trust is what we use oftentimes to help people put some money away and protect it. Now, it's generally not everything you have. It might be, and I actually have a framework that I've created based on your age and asset level. I think there's a certain percentage ranges that you should consider moving into, I call it each of the buckets. So I have a bucket that's kind of like, it's yours, you spend it, you have fun with it. A bucket that's more of like, maybe you want to use like an annuity or long-term care insurance to make sure that you get care. And that's really what I oftentimes tell people. That's for care in the home, to make sure you can stay home as long as possible. And then the last bucket is that Family Fortress, where that stuff never has to be spent for long-term care. That's your kind of like, hey, if I had to set aside X amount, make sure my kids get that no matter what, the home, that's where we put that in the fortress to make sure that those funds are always protected. And it's not just from long-term care, it's from everything. So the elder exploitation, lawsuits, probate, final expense, medical bills, long-term care, you name it, is protected from everything. So we kind of have some stuff out here, money you use on your day-to-day, a pot of money for long-term care, and then the rest of it that's just protected.
I had some sisters who came in last week who were seeking long-term care options for their father. And they said at first he really did not want to even discuss it with them. This is one of those touchy subjects for adult children with their aging parents. So how do you suggest people navigate that conversation when it comes to paying for long-term care? Because I think a lot in the generation that's aging into nursing facilities now, they just don't even want to think about that happening to them. They've been independent for so long, and thinking about everything they've seen in their lifetime, it feels like a loss of independence.
It is. Yeah, there's no doubt that it is a loss of independence. Fortunately, it's one of these things that it's not, I shouldn't say it's a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, because that isn't true. About a quarter, as we said, of people won't need long-term care. And that's great. But because it is so prevalent, I think a way to broach the conversation is that a lot of people who are getting to that age really pride themselves on not being a burden to their children. And that's very important to them, that they're never a burden on their children as they age. So having a conversation about, hey, we just want to make sure that as you're getting older, should you need help, that we can because I mean, we can pay for it if you want us to, but we could do some planning in advance to make sure that that everything that you have is protected, that you can get the best care that you need should you get there. And if you don't, great. That's the neat thing about a lot of the pre-planning tools that we use is there's not a downside to it if you don't use it. Whether you have the fortress, it still protects against everything else. If you have one of these life insurance policies or annuities, well, there's death benefits. So even if you end up living to 100, great, healthy, pass away in your sleep, never use long-term care, that money goes back to your kids. So it isn't wasted. And the other piece of it that's kind of nice with the annuities is most of those you have access to while you're alive as well. So if you, let's say hypothetically, you somehow run out of money, well, you can access the cash value of those policies as well. So, there is a lot of benefit to using these things and planning in advance. The problem, of course, is when you need it, it's too late, right? So like everything else, you can't wait to start saving for retirement once you retire, right? It's something you got to start years ahead. Fortunately, with the long-term care, insurance products or, annuities, those you don't have to do 20 years in advance, 5-10 years might be sufficient.
And if they don't do that pre-planning, you can still call us and we'll help. Yeah.
There is, that is the one thing I do want to make clear though, is I don't want people to think that the benefits of pre-planning are equal to the benefits of crisis planning. And what I mean by that is they're not equal. When you're doing the pre-planning, you're putting yourself in the best possible situation. When we're doing the crisis planning, we're doing our best to limit the worst downside. So it will not be as financially
easy,
profitable, whatever word you want to use, to do the crisis planning. We will protect the majority of what you have for sure. But if you care about protecting all of it, we can do that with the pre-planning side. So, if you had to think of it like percentages, maybe we protect 80 to 90% on the crisis side. On the pre-planning side, we protect 100% and maybe even help you grow what you have. So not only are you protecting 100%, but you may end up with 105 or 110%, so the financial differences are significant, but it's never too late. And that's, I think, an important thing that you're pointing out. If you've done nothing, it's not too late. You can still come to us, even when mom is in that facility, even if she's been there for 6 months, spending down her savings, that family nest egg is going and going and going. It's not too late. It's honestly, truly, the only time it's too late is after you've spent everything. We can still get you on Medicaid, but there's nothing left for us to protect at that point.
Yeah.
So it's always sooner the better.
And I think that is a good point too, because I think there's a common misconception that you have to spend down, that you cannot keep anything. And people call us all the time and say, oh, mom's only got $5,000 left. And, the rent is due next month to her assisted living. Well, that's going to be gone when you could have protected it sooner.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a sad situation. And, the thing about our industry is it's very unique and a lot of people just don't understand it. And when I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of lawyers do not understand what we do. I can't tell you how many attorneys I've told what we do, and they say, I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I've never heard of this. Like, yeah, it's just very
niche.
It's very niche.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just important for people to understand that they may get advice about spending down. And I think it was a week or two ago, we had someone that came to us who was told by an attorney that they had to spend down. And so they literally spent everything in the nursing home. And it was about $250,000 that they spent in the nursing home. And then they're coming to us saying, hey, can we get Medicaid? I'm saying, well, yeah, you can, but we could have saved all of that. So unfortunate situation for sure.
Yeah. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for your expertise and time. We know this is going to help a lot of people, and we're so excited to continue bringing new topics to the podcast to help people plan long-term for themselves and for their families.